welcome to week 4. As you guys were chatting in the chat box, yeah, it is going by really quickly. We warned you guys of this too. We warned you that this was going to go by really fast, and you were going to get a lot done in a short amount of time, and it was going to fly. So essentially, that's where we're at. So we're into the last week of the month. Let's see, last week of the month, and this week, what we're going to be focusing on is your final drafts of your presentations. But let me go over really quickly what this week is going to look like, because we got a couple extra things kind of plugged in here as well, but that's okay. Professor Irisari and I are going to give you some guidance when it comes to when to do what and that sort of thing. So Professor Irisari and I are working toward getting you feedback on the first draft of your presentation. So that's what we're working toward right now. We'll get those back to you as soon as we can. Once you've received that feedback, what we're going to ask you to do is take the feedback that you've received from us and apply it to your final draft, okay? So, and we'll talk about that in more detail in just a second. But looking at the assignments that we have due this week, first you have your 4.2 learning activity. So as you've seen with all of the, the other learning activities that we've done for this month, what you're going to be doing is doing the reading from the assigned reading and then discuss the most interesting piece of information from this chapter and from both books. So kind of like a recap of like, what's the most interesting thing you read about this month overall, okay? Next is your 4.3 presentation feedback. So let me show you this live because we always get questions about it. Let me get on the platform really quick. Get on the platform without any FERPA violations. That's the goal here. Professor Irisari knows what I'm talking about. It's a instructor inside joke. That's not funny to anyone else but us, but that's okay.
Hopefully nothing.
Yes, no identifying information, essentially. Okay, so I'm gonna laugh about that to myself for a while. I find it to be really funny, but that's okay. Okay, so sorry, Professor Erie, sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
Nothing, I was just laughing too, just cracking myself up.
Oh, okay. Yes. Professor Irisari and I love a good cheesy dad joke, which is the only jokes that I ever produce are bad dad jokes. Okay, so your 4.3 presentation feedback. For this assignment, what you're going to be doing is let me get into the instructions. You're going to be watching a presentation and giving feedback. So it's a student presentation. So essentially you're kind of switching places with Professor Irisari or myself. You're going to pretend that you are now the instructor. You're going to watch this presentation and give the student feedback, okay? So very much like we did pretty similar to what we did with the TED Talk analysis where you watched a professional presentation and you gave some feedback based upon that. Same kind of concept here, but what you're going to be doing is watching a student presentation and then based upon these prompts down here, like what specifically did you like about the presentation? What did you dislike about it? That sort of thing. So just going through and seeing like how did this student present this information? How did they execute their presentation? And then basing your feedback upon that. Okay. So the thing I wanted to show you was, let's see. Right here are the instructions, and then once I click on those, it brings this open, this PDF here, and the student presentation links are right here. The 1, 2, and 3, you choose one of those, watch it, and then base your analysis on the prompts that are down here. Okay? Awesome. We always get questions about, hey, Professor Jarvis, where can I find the student presentations? I don't see them on the page. Got to click on the instructions, and then they are there. Okay? So this is 4.3. So your learning activity is due, the first one in 4.2, Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Same with your 4.3, Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we have your 4.4 Brand Yourself presentation. So this is going to be the final draft of your presentation. So what you're going to be doing is taking the feedback that you received from your peers on the discussion board and then take the feedback that either myself or Professor Irisari left for you and implementing those changes into your presentation, making those revisions, and then submitting it as your final draft. So that's your 4.4 Brand Yourself. That's essentially what we've been gearing up for all month. and then you're going to submit that on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as well, okay? And then that last one there, the portfolio competency, that one is going to be, I didn't close that, I just minimized it, right? Yep. So let me go back to that and I'll show you where that lives too, down here under portfolio competency. Just give that a little click. And so even though you guys might not pay too much attention to them, Professor Irisari and I pay a lot of attention to course outcomes for all the courses that we teach, because that's essentially our rules and regulations for the course. Like, what does a student need to learn in this course? Well, they need to learn these 6 things. So then that's what we base the curriculum off of. So if you ever wanted to know what your curriculum's based off of, it's based on of course outcomes. And sometimes they're called different things in different institutions, but that's essentially what we go by. So for this portfolio competency self-reflection assignment, what you're going to be doing is you're going to read through these 6 course outcomes, and you're going to be talking about how you've met these outcomes and thinking about, there's some prompts under here, what did you expect from the course? What was the biggest takeaway from the course? How well do you met the requirements of the course? Those sorts of things, like what skills did you learn? So kind of like an overview of what did you think of the course? What did you take away from the course? What are some skills that you learned that you could apply later on in life? Like those sorts of things, okay? So this presentation can be done in either a video format or like a written essay type of format. So if you choose to do it in a video format, same as we've always shown you with videos, it needs to be in a push-to-play format. So this could just be you in front of the camera talking for that video. So you just take that video and you would upload it to the platform. Or if you choose to do it in an essay format, you just do it in like a Word document or a Google Docs document. Just type that out, type out your responses to the questions that you see there in the, in the instructions. So that's what you would do there. Portfolio competency is also due Sunday, Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have like I don't know what's happening with my throat right now. Anyway. So those are the assignments for this week. So how do we recommend that you kind of navigate these? So like I said, Professor Irisari and I are going through and giving you guys feedback on your 3.4s. So as you're waiting for our feedback and waiting for feedback from peers on the discussion board, we recommend that you go through and do your 4.2, 4.3, and portfolio competency. Get those done and out of the way as you're kind of like waiting for the feedback. After you've received that feedback, then you can go in and start on your, start making those revisions on your for your final draft. But it kind of, the problem we don't want you to get into is like let's say Saturday or Sunday, you're like working diligently on your final draft, and then you finish the final draft, you submit it, you're like, oh, I'm good to go, and then you forget that you had these other assignments that you had to submit. So if you get those other assignments out of the way first, and then you can focus on your final draft, and then you will feel more confident with that. So that's what we recommend doing there. Isaiah's asking about length requirement for the essay. There isn't a specific length requirement for it, but most students complete like a full page. Like 1 page is usually what students submit for that. But we don't have like a formal one. It's kind of like whatever length you need to fulfill the requirements of the assignment. I know students love to hear that response from us. Whatever you need to do to fulfill the length requirements. But yeah, usually students do like a 2 to 3 minute video if they do it in a video format, and then yeah, Laquan is asking. So 2 to 3 minute video for the video format, and then 1 page for the typed essay format. Okay. I didn't mention this before, but essentially, let's see. That was the first time a length was not formally assigned. That is awesome. Some people, yeah. Well, Joshua, I think that you're referring to the rough drafts of the presentations. We were talking about the portfolio competency. So with portfolio competency, you can submit that as a video format if you want for the portfolio competency, but for the, I think Joshua, you were referring to the first draft of the presentation. Yes, some students do submit first drafts that are 10 minutes long, but that is what revisions are for, is to kind of get that back down to 3 to 4 minutes, okay? Let's see. So I forgot to mention this earlier, which I usually do at the top of the course, or at the top of the class, but essentially what Professor Irisari and I are going to be doing today, it's a kind of a short and sweet type of presentation, but just going over our expectations for the final draft. I went over the assignments. I'm gonna pass it back to Professor Irisari so she can go over the tips for your final presentation, and then we're just gonna pretty much open it up for question and answer. We're gonna go briefly over. Professor Irisari will go over the tips, and then she's gonna go over kind of what we're looking for when it comes to grading and how we grade the final presentations, and then we're just going to do questions and answers. So if there's questions that you guys have about um, the final presentation or the week 4 assignments and that sort of thing, that's going to be your time to ask those questions. So that's kind of the way that the rest of this is going to run. Professor Irisari, I'll send it over to you to go over the tips and then the grading process, and then we'll take questions and answers.
Okay, everyone, hello, and I'm so glad to be here with all of you for week 4. It's very exciting. I know we were talking about it in the chat box, and we'll miss all of you as well. The time always seems to fly by with our 4-week semesters, but let's jump on in. We're going to go over tips for this final presentation, and then if you have any questions as we're going over the tips or after, continue to type those into the chat box. So first of all, on the list, it talks about your audio recording. You want to make sure that you speak naturally and you continue to practice. It's really apparent if you are trying to read from a script. So it's a good idea to have a general outline of what you want to say, like your presentation plan, where you have a good general guide of the things that you want to mention, but don't read word for word from your script. Oh, Laquanda, my voice is going out and out. Can everyone hear me now? Is this better?
Yeah, we could hear you. It was just kind of like inconsistent a little bit.
Okay, everyone, if that happens again, I'm going to switch to a different microphone. I apologize. But again, great example of why sometimes you have to re-record. So am I sounding fluent now? No
Yes,
gaps in the audio? Okay,
sounds,
perfect.
sounds good. Yep.
As we're talking about audio recording, so of course, this is live, but for your presentation, one of the huge advantages that I see is that you get to re-record it as many times as you want. So if you are recording and your microphone goes out like mine just did, or your cat jumps on you, or someone slams the door or something else happens in the background, you can always re-record around that. So keep that in mind. This is not a one-shot presentation. This is your opportunity to really make those revisions and perfect that audio as much as possible in the time frame that you have. It's also a good idea. Oh, Alexandra, your cat jumped on you the first 3 takes. Yeah, sometimes we have to find a animal-free zone or a child-free zone to record in, so that we can get that really clear, crisp audio. We want Alicia, your baby screams every time you try to talk. Probably only when you're trying to talk about something important or trying to record audio for a project such as this. And I'm sure if nothing else is going on, it's it's your baby's probably not as loud. Oh, your mic picks up traffic outside, Andrew. Yes. So I have actually heard presentations where the outside nighttime sounds are really loud, and I found that to be very interesting. And there was one presentation where I actually couldn't tell if they had added it as a background, some background noise in the presentation, or if they had just recorded outside on a really loud night with lots of frogs and other little critters. So it is difficult, and it can be a challenge to do it. Sometimes we've had students in the past who have talked about how they've recorded their audio in their closets, that was the best room in the house to record audio. Oh, and Professor Jarvis, great minds think alike. She just said the same thing in the chat box, that sometimes students record audio in the closet with a blanket over their head. So sometimes you have to test different rooms in your house, because of course different areas in your house are going to have different acoustics, and the sound will bounce around in different ways. We have a bedroom in my house that's right next to the living room, but you can't hear any of the noise in the living room, and then we have a bedroom on the other side of the house, and you hear everything from the living room. So it's sometimes just a matter of figuring that out. Jake says you must suffer for your art. Well, hopefully not too much. And Alicia says that hers would have to be a bathroom. That could be a good strategy. Sometimes recording in your car can be a good strategy, depending on if you live on a quiet street or not. That can sometimes work as long as there are no barking dogs nearby, trying to find that quiet space. And sometimes our cars are a great soundproof booth. But overall, I will share with all of you something that I have not heard this semester. I've only graded about a third of the presentations, the first drafts so far. But I have heard fire alarm smoke detector batteries going off in the background of quite a few different presentations, which one, I'm very concerned for those students' safety because they definitely should replace those batteries. But two, my dogs go crazy if that happens. They think it's our smoke detector battery. So I was very surprised that I've heard that a few times, but it sounds like that can really detract from the professionalism of that final draft. So those are the kinds of things you really want to watch out for. Alexandria says, as long as I'm not cooking, you won't have to worry about that for me. I would say the same thing in my kitchen. I actually have a magnet that says dinner is ready when the smoke alarm goes off. So yeah, I watch out for that one as well. But let's go ahead and move on from the audio. Oh, actually one last note about the audio. I do want to say also, yeah, Alicia, you need that magnet. I do want to say that when you're recording the audio, you want to sound professional, you want to sound conversational, speak naturally, just like Professor Jarvis and I do in these recordings, but a polished version of that natural, because of course you can re-record if things happen. But also sound enthusiastic and excited, because this is your future career. This is a step towards those future goals that you have. The whole reason you're in school, that you're projecting ahead to that future self and all the things you want to accomplish. So you should feel a certain level of excitement and enthusiasm. And remember what Julian Treasure says, vary your tone of voice, use that vocal toolbox. It is very hard to listen to someone who does not vary their tone of voice at all for an extended period of time, as he says in his talk. So varying your tone of voice is incredibly helpful to an audience, especially for this type of project where most of you are not actually going to see you on the screen while you're speaking, or at least the whole time you're speaking. So let's go ahead and move on now and talk about some of the images that you're using in your presentation. Yes, Alicia, it is a struggle for me to keep my voice all in one tone. I definitely enjoy speaking to all of my students. Um, so that can be yes, so it's very hard for me to do even for a short period. Jake, you're saying your mic isn't so good, so it doesn't pick up your tone of voice very well. Jake, I definitely understand that can be a challenge. I would see if you have on your computer or your laptop or even your cell phone a built-in microphone that might actually be better than some of the older plug-in microphones that some of us still have around in our house. I'm a huge fan of thrift shopping. I actually got my headset from the thrift shop, a nice Logitech headset. So you can find them all over. So back to the images that you're using in the presentation, you want to make sure that you're using really high resolution images, because not everyone is using the same computer screen, and you don't want your images to look blurry or pixelated when they come up on the screen as you are narrating over them for the presentation. These images are very important, and you want them to look intentional and professional. You don't want to choose grainy images just because they're the first ones you found that relate to your topic. It's a good idea to make sure that the images that you are using don't have a lot of watermarking on them. And a watermark is something like Shutterstock that is just pasted across those images, that's a clear indication that you probably are violating the copyright by using that image, or you're not violating the copyright because it has the watermark across it, but it just doesn't look as professional as if you chose high quality images from one of those free image sites that we've shared out throughout the semester, the list we shared, and I can share it out again in my follow-up message. There are plenty of sites to go to for images that you are allowed to use that won't have that watermarking or that copyright on it. Next, let's move on to consider your audience. So don't forget, I know that all of my students whose presentations I have given feedback on the first drafts, and that's about a third of my students so far, but I'm going to continue throughout the week. The audience is not the instructor, so I am not your audience, and it's not your classmates. So while we are reviewing your presentations and we're giving you feedback, your target audience relates to your future goals. So who do you want to hire you? Do you want to be hired by a specific company? Do you want someone to hire you for graphic design? Do you want to be hired within the music industry? You have to think really specifically about who your target is. Are you promoting your business? Are you promoting your brand? Are you promoting your music? And be specific to them. Um, So I see a question in the chat box that when we'll be getting feedback from our instructors. So for all of the students who submitted on time by Sunday at 11:59 p.m., you will have feedback from us by the end of the day on Thursday. That said, we are working as hard as we possibly can to give feedback to all of our students. We have around 75 students each, and we really, really thoroughly review and go through these presentation or the first drafts of these presentations, because we really have to give detailed, very specific feedback to all of you, and that does take a long time to do. Sometimes I watch the first drafts back several times because I want to make sure that I'm viewing a presentation in its entirety, getting the full impression of the presentation to give you the best possible feedback. And I have to say, the ones that I've watched so far this semester have been awesome. I have had just a great bunch of first drafts submitted already. So Alexandria says that she is struggling to pick one audience because there are a few studios, but you're not too picky, and a lot of the bigger ones you want to join require experience. So I would say you have identified that you are targeting a specific type of studio. So what I would do is I would research all of them and all of their expectations, and then I would target that specific type of studio. I actually think that's a little bit more specific than some of my students end up being. So I think that that could be a great direction to go in. You don't necessarily have to choose just one, but I will tell you guys a short story. So I once read a really interesting article on Will Smith, and they were the actor Will Smith, and they were talking about how after he finished his show, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that he really wanted to go on to be a movie star. So his agent sat down with him and they really analyzed what movies they thought were going to be big hit movies directly in the coming future, and they decided on big budget sci-fi films with a lot of special effects, which were still relatively new at the time. So he went on to star in the movie Independence Day, and then I should say the original Independence Day, and then the original Men in Black. And that was really when his movie star career took off. So sometimes we have to be strategic in choosing our audience and thinking about who we're going to target so that it best benefits our future goals and our future careers. So just one example of choosing a very specific area. So let's go ahead and move on and talk about the video recording of your presentation. So your video recording does need to be in push to play format. Now, what does this mean? A YouTube video is a great example of push to play format, or an MP4 file. Those are great examples because all we have to do is click play and we can watch your whole video in its entirety. If you are able to do so, to upload your video to YouTube, that is a great way to ensure that absolutely everyone can watch your draft who has the link. You can upload it to YouTube as unlisted, and then it won't be searchable for anyone who's on YouTube. It would just be the people that you provide the link to. And it's actually a huge benefit to Professor Jarvis and I when we are going through and giving feedback on many, many presentations, to be able to watch your videos either on YouTube or in MP4 format. Those tend to work really well. Now, what we don't want to see is a PowerPoint that we would have to click through and click on a variety of little sound icons in order to hear all of the different parts of the PowerPoint. That's not push to play format. And frankly, it's just not nearly as professional as if you are able to provide one polished video that you could upload to YouTube or upload the video directly. We want to see that final polished version. You don't want to give a future employer a PowerPoint presentation or a slides type presentation where you're looking at where they can see all of the different slides and all of the components and they can see what's coming next. You want them to watch your video in the most polished professional way. So I highly recommend upload it to YouTube. It's a great tool to get started using, or upload your video directly. I will also mention that when you're uploading a file, if you are using, I should also mention an Adobe Spark video is also very easy to process and watch. And I know many of you are using Adobe Spark this semester for the first time. So way to go. We love Adobe Spark here. We're not sponsored by Adobe Spark in any way, shape, or form. We just think it's a really great free program that our students can start to use to create these amazing presentations. So if you're using Adobe Spark, you can download the whole file and upload it into the presentation box, or they will also provide you with a link to your presentation. But in the submission box, and some of you have run into this already, you are not able to just paste a link and have it shown as submitted. You will need to upload a document. So one of the ways to do this is to paste your link, such as a YouTube link or an Adobe Spark link, into a Word document file, and then upload that document, and then it will show as submitted. So that's one way to do it. The second way to do this is to put your link in the comments section on that official assignment submission page for the 4.4 final presentation assignment. This is actually a great way to make sure that we can watch your projects. So I would suggest uploading it in a file and then go ahead and paste that link directly into a comment on the same page, just so we have it in a couple different places. It makes our life easier, and then you know that we're going to have that correct link to watch your final project. And timing, we've already talked about timing. I personally find timing to be extremely important. In the real world, sometimes you only have a short amount of time to make a first impression. So make the best use of those 3 to 4 minutes. I tell all of my students, focus on what's most important, what's most relevant, and what's most interesting while meeting all of those required components of the final project. So I know that while we've been going over these tips, we've been answering questions, and Professor Jarvis has been answering even more questions in the chat box. So keep those questions coming as we move forward with today's presentation. Professor Jarvis, did you want to add anything to these tips, or did you want to go ahead and advance the slide?
We can move forward.
Okay. Grading. Let's go ahead and talk about how you would be graded on this presentation. So when we are grading you on the presentation, we are going to be looking at the feedback that we provided you on your first draft. And first and foremost, we are going to be looking at, did you make changes? Because that is absolutely required. It is a policy of our program, not just Professor Jarvis, not just me, Professor Irisari. It is a policy that if you do not make changes, we are not allowed to give you a grade for the final draft. So you must make revisions from the first draft to the final draft. I will also let you know, because some students think, I did great on the first draft, why can't I submit this project for the final draft? Well, you did great for a first draft. So the grade you receive is for a first version of a presentation. Once you've made those revisions, we are grading you on how well you have addressed the feedback that we have left you on the presentation. So we want to see that you are addressing every item of feedback that we have left for you on that first draft and polishing your audio, polishing your video, tweaking the information that you're conveying, making sure you're doing a great job with those star moments, making sure you're talking about your target audience, making sure you're talking in great detail about your time at Full Sail. Tell us about the programs you've learned. Tell us about the classes you've taken. Tell us about the projects you've worked on, as if you are projecting ahead to your future self. That's what we're looking for with the final project. Andrew, I can see in the chat box that you're saying if your presentation is over time by about a minute. So if your first draft is over time by about a minute, you might lose a little bit of points. Your final draft, you would lose more points if your final draft was still over the 3 to 4 minute mark. So as I've said, focus on meeting all of those core requirements of the project. Make sure you have a beginning, a middle, a conclusion, that you are including information about your target audience, about yourself, about your time at Full Sail, that you've included those star moments, and then go from there. Do you have any time to include anything else? And I also tell my students to include at the end, include your contact information, and then ask them to go ahead and contact you, because that's a great way to utilize that video to actually ask your target audience to get a hold of you and to hire you for your future goals. Andrew, you're welcome. Let's go ahead and continue to take questions in the chat box. So if you've thought of anything else that you're wondering while we're still here, our last go-to session for the semester, we are happy to answer any questions you might have, not just about grading, about the presentations, about the other assignments due this week. Now, I did see earlier in the chat box that this question was answered, but I want to go ahead and read it out loud, that some of you may not have received feedback from your peers in that week 3 peer feedback discussion board. Now, if all of you remember from last week what we talked about, that discussion board is still open through the end of the week. So many of you have worked really hard on your first draft and now are just getting to providing feedback within that discussion board. And I am often amazed at the quality feedback that my students provide to each other in that discussion board. So make sure that you're providing great, honest feedback. One of the things that I often talk about is that it's not helpful to others to say, great job, great job, great job, if there are things that they actually could be revising. So if you notice that the presentation is off on time, let them know that politely, nicely, using the RISE model, but still let them know that piece of information. If you aren't telling them something that they could be revising for their final project to get a better grade, that's not a nice thing to do. And we are all here to learn, so this is a great opportunity to practice giving feedback. Let me see. Alicia in the chat box says we get points deducted if your screaming baby walks in the bathroom door. So Alicia, this is expected to be the final draft is expected to be a polished final version of that final presentation. So if that happens, just re-record. Re-record until you get that final polished version of the project. So that probably means you will have to record several times, but get that great final version. And some students like to record this project in pieces. So if you do one take and you really like the beginning, and then you do another take and you really like the end, if as long as you can piece the audio clips together seamlessly, you can match them up and then have really great audio throughout, as long as we can't tell that you're piecing the different pieces together. Andrew is asking, do our degree programs include all Adobe software? If so, where can we access it? And Professor Jarvis, I actually am not 100% sure about that. Oh, okay. So once you get your launch box, you will have access to the Adobe Creative Suite. Although we know that you have not yet received your launch boxes yet, that happens around, Professor Jarvis, remind me which month they get their launch boxes.
Each program is a little bit different, but it's usually month 4. Most of them get it month 4, some of them get it before that, some of them get it after that. It just depends on your program.
Okay, thank you. I was going to say around month 4, but I didn't want to misspeak because I know that's a very exciting time for all of you, and I didn't want to set your expectations incorrectly.
And they also get different things in in the launch box and stuff like that. But I think everyone gets access to Creative Suite because it's kind of something that you can use throughout all of the programs. But I know that each program gets different software loaded onto the computer and that sort of thing. And even some of the game design students get PCs versus a Mac and all of that sort of stuff.
Very interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, because the computer programming students, the computer science students, computer programming, unfortunately, this is the only thing that I will say a Mac can't do. Computer programming is better done on a PC rather than a Mac, I
I don't
guess,
know.
from what I
I don't.
hear.
I don't know if all of our students this month have heard that Professor Jarvis is a very devoted Mac
Yeah.
user, and then me, Professor Irisari, I'm a very devoted PC user. Oh, Josh is saying Mac isn't recommended for gamers. So
Yeah.
Professor Jarvis, they found you
Coding is
out.
what I meant. Yeah, coding is what I meant by programming. I meant coding. All the ones and zeros that I don't understand.
Yeah, Josh is saying they burn out a lot more. Professor Jarvis.
I
Um,
mean, okay, in my entire life, well, not in my entire life, in my entire adult life, I've only owned 2 Macs, and both of them, the first one lasted me 8 years, and this one I'm on year 5, and I've never had a problem with it. So
Okay.
I don't know,
You might have
guys.
me beat there. I have about 5 dead PC
That's
laptops
the,
in my
yeah,
closet.
that's the thing is, all my friends that have PC laptops, they're like a year or two, and then they become extinct, I guess. So
I'm hoping that's because I was a very poor college student working my way through school and I bought very cheap laptops. So Oh, I see. You can buy cheap PCs. MacBooks are very expensive. Yes. So that's part of why I had PCs to begin with. So I'm hoping that now I have a slightly nicer PC laptop. I'm hoping that it'll last a little bit longer.
Um, yes. Andrew's asking about keeping in touch with us after. Yeah, so you can keep in touch with Professor Irisari and I. I've had students, I don't know how long we stay in the system for. Like, for example, we can contact students that we had months and months and even a year ago. But you can contact us on the platform. You can also email us as well, if you want to stay in touch with us.
Yeah, occasionally we hear from students from previous semesters or even previous years that like to reach out to us and let us know how they're using different skills that they learned in the class or using some of the different work that they've used that they created in the class, and that's really interesting and really neat for us to hear. Just we love hearing what everyone is doing and going forward in their degree program.
So Jake's bringing up that he can get a Chromebook for 150. Okay, here's the thing. But you pay that 150 once, but then do you have how many times do you have to replace that? Like I spend like $1,000, let's say $1,000 on my MacBook Pro, and I've had it for 5 years now, and I've never ever had a problem with it. So it's like, plus
Well,
it's compatible. It's also compatible with all of my other technology. Everything is compatible. It all works nicely together. Just amazing.
well, my PCs all work together as well at the moment. Although
Yes,
I did
do you get your text messages on your laptop and on your other devices that you get on your phone at the same time?
I could, but I choose not to because I'm already so plugged in. But I did just learn today about the facial recognition software on
Yeah,
iPhones. I don't know if that's on, those are on,
it is. I have the iPhone RX, I guess. Yeah, I do have facial recognition, which I don't like because I cook a lot, and so I use recipes on my phone, and my phone will be down on the counter, and so you have to put your face over it to use it, and my hands are all dirty or whatever, and then like I have to do a weird lean over the phone in order to get it to work. So I don't know. It's a thing.
oh, you
It's
have
a
to
me thing. I don't think it's an everyone thing. It's just a me thing. But
you have to look at it for it to look back at you.
yes, exactly. Um,
All right, everyone, before
we're going way off
as,
the rails.
as you can tell, as you can tell, this debate will not be solved between us today, but we're at least
Yeah.
we're good-natured about it. But we do want to take some more time to answer any questions you might have about the. Oh, look, Alicia.
Andrew, hold on. Andrew's asking about the MacBook that you get. I'm pretty sure you get the newest version available.
Jake says eventually we'll get world peace.
I mean, if the only thing we have to argue about is Mac versus PC, then I'm happy with that actually.
Yeah, I think our friendship is safe.
Um, except for when we want to share files and things like that, and then I
Oh,
can't really.
true, true.
Uh, so Alicia low-key doesn't want this to end. I mean, as essentially, and the other thing to add to it is Professor Irisari and I are not in the same room, so it's just like the never-ending battle. Mac versus PC.
Yeah, we're on
But
different
if
sides of Florida.
yeah, but if you guys want answers to questions applicable to the classroom, we will help you out with that as well. If you guys don't have any questions or you're not here for the battle royale of between Professor Irisari and myself, you can feel free to sign off. That's totally fine. If you do have questions, we are here for that as well. This is also, oh, we have questions. I was going to say something else, but no, let's keep going. For the final draft, just focus on the feedback received and improve upon what was pointed out. Yes. Or if there's any personal revisions that you want to make, you can do that as well. That's totally fine. Does Full Sail offer any programs or assisting for career opportunities after we complete our degrees? Yes. Um, Let me find a link for you. They have a whole career services department. So let me look that up. But while I'm looking that up, I'm really excited about this, so I'm going to share it with you all, and I feel like there's going to be some fans on here as well. But if any of you guys are into Breaking Bad, movies coming out on October 11th. The trailer for the Breaking Bad
No
movie just
way.
released on Netflix. Watch it, get excited. Let's see. Oops, let's see. Career development.
I had no idea. I have to watch the trailer now.
Well, I didn't either, and I was waiting for another trailer to come out today on YouTube. I'm not going to say what it is because maybe you guys will shame me for it, but but yeah. What was I going to say about that? Oh, so I saw that and it was trending. So I saw that it was trending, and I figured it out. Career development. So okay, so there's a career development department. I'm just trying to find some contact information for you. Let's see.
So Alicia is asking if there are any remote internships. So I'm sure that they are out there. I don't know if they are directly affiliated with the college, but that would be something interesting to look for, especially because this whole program is online, and clearly a lot of our technology is moving more towards digital work.
Yeah, and I recommend because there were some questions about this before of like how do we gain this experience? Like this company's asking for this much experience, how do we gain it, blah 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 blah. But the thing is what I recommend doing is reach out to these companies, let them know that you're interested in working with them and be like, "Hey, I'll work for free. Like whatever you need me to do, I'm there." And that's how you gain that experience. I don't know about you, Professor Erie, sorry, but I know for me, I did a lot of work for free, internships, just like whatever I could, whatever I could get experience wise while I was in college and even outside of college. I was, we definitely did that while I was working another job. I was doing that and going to school, and it was, yeah.
Absolutely. I've spent 10 years waiting tables while I was working to pay my way through school and grad school, and I also did work for free. So at one point, I was working on a book that was later published, and I was working a 9 to 5 job, the worst job I've ever had in my life. It was more like a 8 to 7 job, and I came home from work one day. This was after I had graduated with my bachelor's degree, and the book that I had worked on for free at the time, I did get some college credit for it though, was on the doorstep, and it had been a particularly horrible day at work, and essentially it sent me running back to grad school so that I could be here with all of you.
So Andrew, on my side, I know Andrew was asking before about career development. I can't see it on my side because I'm looking at the instructor version of Full Sail One. But if you go on the full, I put just Full Sail. Oh goodness. If you go to the Full Sail One website and then search for career development, you'll see their information there, their contact information and all that good stuff.
And you can always go out and look at community resources, depending on what you're interested in, depending on what you have access
Yep.
to. My cousin is currently doing an internship on a local farm in Pennsylvania, where she's learning how to make cheese from goat's milk and all kinds of little things. So there are endless opportunities out there for all of you, but sometimes you have to be the one to seek them out. But definitely start with the Full Sail website first, and then see what's out there.
Yeah, or even you guys that are doing like graphic design and that sort of thing, go to a local business and be like, "Hey, I would love to redesign your logo for you. Would you mind letting me do that like I'll do it for free. Let me do it." What do they have to lose? They could absolutely have you do that. You could gain some experience, put it in your portfolio, all of that stuff. So, yeah, it
Just don't
it is
just
what
don't
it is.
tell them that you've chosen them because their current logo
Yeah.
stinks, even if that's true. Don't tell
Yeah,
them
right.
that. Just
Yep,
kindly offer your assistance.
exactly. Yes, that's good feedback on that one. Hey, your logo sucks. Can I redesign that for you? I mean, that's one approach. It's not the approach we would recommend, but it is an approach.
All right, let's see. Let's see if anybody has any other questions. Alicia's mentioning rubrics. So we use the rubrics when we grade your assignments, of course, and you can certainly use the rubrics when you're working on the assignments. But the rubrics really judge how well you have completed the assignment requirements as well. So it's just one tool that you can use, but from your end as a student, it can be helpful to review the rubrics, but also make sure that you're following all the directions.
Yeah, because if you guys have ever had an instructor who just like you handed something in and they were just like, "Oh, here's an 80." And you're like, "Well, how did I get this 80?" And they didn't have like a rubric to go by or anything. They're just like, "Oh, I just took 20 points off because it wasn't that great," or whatever, whatever they say. Having a rubric keeps us honest because it keeps us accountable to say, well, like for example, for the TED Talk discussion or TED Talk um, presentation, like if you didn't have visuals, you lose a certain amount of points right off the top because you're missing that element, and that element is worth this amount, that sort of thing. So it keeps us honest.
It also helps to keep things consistent between the
Yeah,
classes. So if you're in my
it does.
class, I'm grading your assignments. If Professor Jarvis if you're in Professor Jarvis' class, she's grading her assignments, but it keeps a commonality between how all of us grade. Does your draft affect your grade? Well, the draft is a certain portion of your final grade, but if you're Sebastian, if you're asking if your first draft affects the grade on your final draft, then the answer would probably be as long as you're addressing all of the feedback that we've left you for the first draft, the answer is probably no, because we're not in any way averaging the grades between the first draft and the final draft. Um, so as you can see,
But let
Professor
me, but
Jarvis.
I think, but the other part of that question might be how does it affect your grade? Is it weighted? Is that the question? Because it is weighted, it's 15% of your grade. I don't know if what the specific question is, what way you're at, Sebastian's asking that.
Yes, so it's the first draft is 15% of your final grade, but then the final draft will be graded completely separately from the from the first draft. So I've actually had students that have struggled a bit on the first draft, and then they have done an amazing, amazing job on the final draft. That is not unusual, and it all goes back to you and how much effort you put into the revisions for the final draft.
Yeah, and
Sarah,
Sarah's asking about the revision document, and we forgot to mention that earlier.
thank you for bringing that up, Sarah.
So yes, we do want, and it's just something very simple. It's just like a Word document or Google Doc, whatever. Just a document of a bulleted list of like things you changed. Like I re-recorded my audio because my baby was screaming in the background in my first draft, or I changed the visuals on slide 3, 7, and 5 because my originals were really pixelated. Like really just very very brief decisions that you, or excuse me, very brief list of revisions that you made. And that's also a good place that students, what they'll do is they'll get our feedback and then they'll make a list for themselves. They'll open up a Word document and be like, okay, here are the 3 things that I need to change for my presentation. And then you've made a list for yourself and you check that off and be like, okay, I did this, did this, did this. And then that's also what you submit as well. So it's a good way to kind of keep yourself accountable too. Talking about checking yourself, keeping yourself accountable with the revisions and
It's
remembering them
also,
as well.
oh, sorry, go
No, I
ahead.
was just saying to remember what you had to, what you need to change.
Absolutely. And it's also very helpful for us too, so that we make sure that we're looking out for each and every one of your revisions within the larger presentation.
Hmm. Okay, a couple more minutes. We'll hang out for a couple more minutes if you guys have any additional questions. Oops, sorry about that.
It was your cat jumping on your laptop, right?
Yeah, right. Well, thankfully I'm in my office right now, so I don't have to worry about my cats. But it was me
Oh,
dropping. It was me dropping something.
you can always blame it on the cats.
Yeah, right?
Sebastian, you will be notified as soon as we have entered your feedback. When you have a grade, you have feedback, and you'll see it on the official submission page for the first draft. You'll see that feedback there. But keep in mind, it's just us grading for 3 separate sections of students. So we each are going through about 75 of these presentations in the next few days. And we work our hardest to get feedback to all of you as quickly as possible, but we're also trying to provide really detailed, specific feedback to all of you so that the feedback is very much tailored to your specific presentation. So it does tend to take us a little bit longer to get feedback to you than some of the assignments that have have less components than the first draft. But by the end of the day on Thursday, if you submitted on time, you'll have feedback. Joshua, are you talking about that list of free images that you're allowed to use for the presentation? Is that what you're referencing? Yes, I will go ahead and I will send that out again in my, actually, if you give me a moment.
Yeah, because Joshua's one of my students.
Okay, let me go ahead and I'll put that into the chat box and I'll also send it your way, Professor Jarvis.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I had to switch microphones to plug in my flash drive. So the list is in the chat box, and then we can send that out in the follow-up message as well, so that you have access to it.
I really wanted to say something like, if you were on a Mac, you wouldn't have had to. No, just kidding. But I couldn't because it wasn't applicable.
Why wouldn't they?
No, I was kidding. I was gonna say if you were on a Mac, you would have
Oh.
had to switch out anyway. Yeah. Something to make it sound superior.
I will say that I will say that that Mac users do have access to iMovie, which I'm
Yes.
told is a great program that I would very much like to be able to use.
So Alicia's asking about, this is essentially, let me see. We want you to avoid using images like this, okay? Like this proof thing here on the side. But if you find an image that like has this, where it just has a little watermark here in the corner, or let me see something that's not, all these are pretty obnoxious because of what or has something like this at the bottom, that's okay. We're not going to freak out about that, but we don't want an image that's got like a watermark across the whole thing like this. We want to avoid that.
Yeah, thank you for showing them. That's a great example. If you do have to cite an image, it should be in the bottom corner like that. Yeah, and you're saying some have watermarks directly in the center. Absolutely. That's really distracting. So even on these free image sites, you're still going to have to look through and pick and choose. It's just one resource for you.
Yeah, Pexels is another good one too, pexels.com. Pexels. That's where I steal all my images from. Not steal them.
Professor Jarvis.
They're free to use. It says it right on the site. I'm not stealing anything. Well, you know what I mean. I'm taking them, I guess.
We are all about free here, just so you know.
mean,
So any free resources like Adobe Spark or free image sites. Andrew's asking how you should cite the images. Andrew, our first suggestion would be to use images that you are already freely allowed to use, such as from an image site like the ones that we just posted in the chat box. But if you are using an image that belongs to someone else, you would want to put a small citation, usually in the bottom left or right corner of the image, like the example that Professor Jarvis showed. You're welcome, Andrew.
Okay, guys, I think we're going to end it there since we've slowed down significantly on questions. If you guys have any additional questions, you can reach out to us via messages and ask us questions. But we will, oh, no, now, look, I'm just going to come flooding in now. Let's, Joshua, so how would you cite a video clip from player in a game, just his name and the side marks? With the video, it's a little bit different. I've never been asked that question before, so now I'm stumped. I mean, I look at it in this way. For something like that, like it's not mandatory that you cite it just because you're using this for educational purposes, but you could always put a little note at the end of your presentation as well, like a little not like a little credit to that person, like video used in presentation was from, and then you could give their name. That's the way I would do that. Oh, thank you, Andrew. That was very nice. We appreciate that. Thank you guys for joining us today and joining us all month. We appreciate it. Like I said, reach out to us. Okay, cool. So I was just, Joshua, that makes sense. So reach out to us. Oh, that's the other thing. Professor Erie, sorry, I don't think that we mentioned this before. I'm going to mention it now. I might put it in my follow-up message just in case. But Joshua, when you said that about playing games and videos and stuff like that, one thing that we do not want you to do, and I don't think we mentioned this explicitly, we do not want you to have your entire video be gameplay and then just like video gameplay as your visuals and then have you speak over it. We do not want that. So if you do include like some gameplay within your presentation, like video of gameplay, you can have that in there, but there needs to be slides that are in there as well. So you could have like a short clip of video gameplay and then switch to slides and then video gameplay and then switch to slides, that sort of thing if you want to do it that way. But it can't be just, it can't be just video of gameplay in your background the entire time.
And to
you can
jump
show
in
the
here,
you absolutely can, but we don't want to see like, I was going to give examples and I'm not going to do that. I don't want you to have like just video of gameplay in the background throughout. Even if it is showing like differences between them, there needs to be some other visuals that go along too, just because that's part of the competency for this presentation. We need to see how you develop your own original visual aid.
And I also want to say, also don't, the same thing goes for videos of you. So your final project cannot just be a video of you speaking.
Yeah, there has to be some slide elements in there somewhere. Okay, cool. So we'll close it down there. If you guys have any additional questions, let us know and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Best of luck. Thank you.